Navigating a domestic violence restraining order hearing can be, well, it can be incredibly overwhelming. But having the right evidence, that can change everything. So in this explainer, we're going to walk you through, step by step, how to gather real, credible proof so your story gets heard loud and clear.
And that's not just a saying, it is the absolute truth. You see, in court, it's not enough to just tell your story. You have to be able to prove it. The evidence you bring becomes your strongest voice, really giving solid, objective support to what you're saying.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about why this stuff matters so much. Then we'll get into two super powerful tools, the live photos on your phone and your medical records. And we'll wrap up with how to actually present it all in court and, this is crucial, how to protect your privacy through it all.
So, let's just dive right in with the basics. The biggest challenge in any hearing is proving your case to a judge in a way that's totally clear, factual, and just can't be denied. And your evidence? That's the bedrock of your entire case.
A judge's decision really comes down to these three things. They need to see that your story is consistent, that it's credible. They need to see that your proof is directly connected to the events, that it's relevant. And they have to trust that your evidence is real and hasn't been messed with, that it's authentic. Good evidence doesn't just back up what you say. It builds this foundation of credibility that's incredibly difficult to argue with.
Okay, let's get practical and talk about our first tool. And it's one that, honestly, most of us have in our pocket right this second. It's a feature that's way more powerful than you might think, capturing so much more than a simple snapshot.
The magic word here is context. A regular photo might show an injury, right? But a live photo, it can capture those critical seconds right before and right after. You might hear the tone of an aggressor's voice or see a sudden movement. That little bit of audio and video can be absolutely game-changing for showing what really happened.
And using it is super simple. First, just make sure the feature is on. It's that little icon with the circles. When you go to take the picture, try to keep your hands as steady as you can. And most importantly, document everything as soon as possible after an incident. That helps create a really clear and undeniable timeline.
Now for what might be the most important part of this whole section, metadata. Just think of it like a photo's digital fingerprint. This hidden data proves exactly when and where a photo was taken, which is what gives it authenticity in court. Seriously, without that metadata, it's just a picture. With it, it's verifiable proof.
And protecting that metadata is everything. You have to be so careful here. If you send a photo through a text message, email, or a social media app, it usually strips all that precious data right off. To keep it intact, you have to transfer the original file. Use methods like AirDrop, an iCloud link, or just plug your phone directly into a computer with a USB cable.
All right, our second major tool, medical records, adds this whole other layer of proof. A photo shows what happened, but a medical record brings in a professional, a third party, to confirm your story and give an expert take on it.
You know why medical records are so effective? Because they're objective. It's not just you saying you were hurt, it's a doctor or a nurse writing it down in an official chart. They can even include professional notes like injury is consistent with an assault, which is basically an expert opinion that backs up your version of events.
Getting your own records is your legal right, and the process is actually pretty straightforward. You just contact your doctor's medical records department and fill out a standard HIPAA release form. Just make sure you ask for certified copies, because that's often what the court requires. And ask for everything, all the notes, images, all of it. So you've gathered your photos with the metadata, you've gotten your medical records. The final step is putting it all together and presenting it in a way that lets the judge clearly understand the story that your evidence tells. This checklist right here is your key to a smooth presentation. First, put everything in order by date. This creates that clear timeline we talked about. You'll need at least 3 copies of everything, one for you, one for the judge, and one for the other side. Label them clearly, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, and so on. And just be ready to explain simply and factually what each piece of evidence is and why it matters to your case. Okay, as we start to wrap up, we have to talk about safety. Gathering all this evidence is a huge, courageous step. It's just as important to make sure you're protecting your personal information along the way.
You have control over your information. Before you hand over any documents, you can redact, that just means blacking out, any sensitive stuff that isn't directly relevant to the case, like a social security number. Keep your digital files safe in an encrypted folder, and only share copies with the people who absolutely need them, your lawyer, the court, and law enforcement.
At the end of the day, every single piece of evidence you gather, every photo, every medical report, it becomes another fact that helps tell your story with undeniable clarity and credibility.
When you collect it and present it the right way, it makes sure your voice isn't just heard, it's proven.
This explainer was brought to you by dvlawyers.com. They're a survivor-first marketplace for finding trusted legal and support services. You can head over to their website to find more resources. Thanks for watching.